When did childhood become a supervised activity? Think about it. Most of us grew up doing things on our own, walking to school, playing outside till dark, figuring stuff out. But today, we don't trust kids to do the same thing we remember doing. And it's changing our kids. And it's changing us as parents. So what's the real cost of all this fear? And how do we bring back independence without being reckless and without feeling like that parent? Today, I'm sitting down with Lenore Skenazy, the founder of Free Range Kids and the nonprofit Let Grow, the woman who sparked a national conversation after letting her 9-year-old ride the New York City subway home alone. We talk about why modern parenting is built on worst-case scenarios and why drop-off and pickup is more than just words. Wait until you hear what happened the moment her son walked through the door after finding his own way home. That pride, it's what we're missing. If you're a dad who wants kids who are capable, confident, and resilient, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Lenore, at the end of the day, who are you?
Oh my God. I think I'm like one of the more boring people on the planet now, because all I do is say the same thing. It's been 17 years now, which is that, wow, we don't trust kids to do anything that all of us remember doing when we were kids. And why not? And what's that doing to us as parents, and what's that doing to our kids? So that's me. I'm the person thinking about that issue 24/7.
Yeah, and you've made such a huge movement. If people aren't familiar with you, can you give us the 30-second synopsis of what happened to your boy Izzy back in the day as you sent him off on the subway?
Sure. This was 2008, I think. My son Izzy was 9 back then. He wanted for me and my husband to let him go someplace he'd never been before and find his own way home by subway, which is a New York wish. I understand. It's not universal. And long story short is I took him to a fancy department store in the middle of Manhattan, and I left him there telling him it was that day. Today was the day, Liberation Day. And sure enough, he had to go into the subway, find his way downtown, and then he had to take a bus across town. And he came into our apartment bursting with this pride of being a grown-up kid. Now, I guess grown-up kid is sort of a contradiction in terms, just that he felt proud and older and trusted and like he'd entered a new era, and he had and we had. And when I wrote a column about it, because I was a newspaper columnist back then, why I let my 9-year-old ride the subway alone, 2 days later I was on the Today Show, MSNBC, Fox News, and NPR, defending this decision. And so I started the movement, or I started a blog back then. I called it Free Range Kids. And then I wrote a book, Free Range Kids. Then it became somewhat of a movement. And now I run Let Grow, which is the nonprofit that grew out of Free Range Kids. That is promoting the same thing, that kids are what was I just saying? Somebody today was writing to me today. It's like we're underestimating kids and overestimating danger. And neither of those makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you really have started this massive movement. Let Grow is great. Your book, I just finished reading it, the updated version on Free Range Kids, How Parents and Teachers Can Let Go and Let Grow. It's such a fascinating insight into what's going on in the minds of us parents today.
Yeah. Over the summer, we did a study with the Harris Poll, and we asked parents if 2 10-year-olds are together at a park, playground, what is likely to happen? And 50% replied, 60% said they're likely to get hurt, which is already too bad. But 50% said they were likely to be kidnapped, which is off by a factor of 100%, I'd say. It just isn't happening. And yet these fears dominate culture to this day. I mean, I thought maybe they'd sort of faded. Everybody's so afraid of, social media now and online predators. Maybe they're not as worried about, guys in white vans anymore. But for 50% of people to think that, first of all, 10-year-olds, secondly, 2 of them together, thirdly, modern day America, we just got the statistics in for 2025, the murder rate plunged to rates not seen since we've been keeping numbers. So really, our perception is so out of whack with reality. And when you start making decisions based on really incorrect assumptions, you're going to make some really wacky decisions, like not letting kids walk to the bus stop, or play at the playground because you think they're going to be, kidnapped, or do almost anything on their own in the real world, which, you're talking to dads. They all remember their childhood still. To this day, I don't think there's a dad around who grew up under this incredible sort of helicopter era. And I'll ask you, what did you do as a kid without your parents supervising you?
I was a latchkey kid. I was actually just going to bring that up, Lenore. I walked to the bus stop. I was close enough to walk home from school. My parents worked until 5, 6 o'clock in the evenings. So I would come home. I would make my nachos, my unhealthy nachos in the microwave. I would watch Clarissa Explains It All. Right? Yep. Right. All those things. And to your point, it's completely changed. And, I have 3 kids. We're not immune to that. There's no buses out here in the Colorado area anymore. Lenore, everybody just drops their kids off in Carline. So it's really completely changed.
Wait, there's no bus? Well, if there's no bus, you don't have a choice, right?
No, yeah, unless there's no buses, and the school really doesn't allow people to walk in. There's one bus across the street.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah, we're in a charter school, which we absolutely love. There's one neighborhood across the street, but there's no neighborhoods close by. So the only kids that can walk to school are the ones that are at that neighborhood across the street. Everybody else, they have to be dropped off by their parents in their car. So, yeah.
But they wouldn't forbid a kid who, managed to hike in 3 miles from the wilds of Fort Collins and get to that school, would they?
Going in, they probably wouldn't notice. But leaving, you have to get scanned out on that parking pass or this kid pass in order to get out, or agree to it ahead of time. So, yeah, especially out here when, Colorado, where you're not close, like there's buses there in New York. That's a real big change, too. It's a shame.
That's really interesting. So I get all my ideas from other people. And somebody wrote to me a long time ago and pointed out that, you can't blame helicopter parents because there's a culture out there that is requiring near constant parental or adult supervision. And one of the ways is from the language. And this writer pointed out that in my day, and maybe in your day too, in the morning when the bell rang, that was the arrival bell, right? Everybody had to have arrived by then. In the afternoon, it was dismissal, ding, 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 off you go. But now it's drop off and pick up. So written into the language that we use is an adult treating the kid like a package, basically. I got to drop it off in the morning, and then you have to pick it up. And, we don't just let it go on its legs. You must be there to chaperone it. And into just those silly words, pick up and drop off, which I used too, is this new assumption that, of course, a kid is not going to go out into the world unsupervised. And, of course, a decent parent is always making sure that they can see their kid. I mean, there's, when you build a playground now, there have to be sight lines in every direction. It's like, well, that's kind of boring. What if you want to, hide somewhere or play a secret game of cards? Or, it's the assumption is that an unsupervised child is automatically in danger. And that assumption goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning, this idea that danger is all around. And once you believe that, then you have decided that your job as a parent is basically bodyguard. And that's a big time commitment, and it's boring, and it doesn't help.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about dads in particular, moms do a lot of the planning. They do a lot of the logistics around day-to-day activities. What are some of the things, Lenore, that you think dads can do to add to this picture to help out, but also to kind of begin that process of expanding the free-range component of their kiddos' lives?
I did hear one thing once about how our culture has shifted towards more safetyism. And one of the theories, and in my life it's true, is that women are more safety conscious, more protective in some ways, or more worried. Let's put it that way, than guys. Certainly my husband was the free ranger way more than me in our family, in that he would, let the kids do more on their own, even though that's my stock in trade. And what dads have traditionally done is said, honey, they'll be fine. And it's harder to say in a culture that has become more, in terms of childcare, really dominated by women, the schools and the daycare and nursing and such. So what dads can do, what helps us moms, is having somebody say, like, it's going to be okay. Maybe be a little more rational, maybe be a little more adventurous. And yet it is always hard for any individual dad to buck societal trends. You were just saying, you want your kids to walk to school, you can't. They have to be driven. And you want to just let them go and they can walk home. No, they can't. They have to be signed out. And so one of my co-founders of Let Grow is a guy named, I'm sure you've heard of him, Jonathan Haidt. He wrote the book, The Anxious Generation. His stock wasn't as high when we started out, thank God. But he always talks about how a collective problem, which is nobody letting their kids walk to school, nobody thinking your kids can just go to the park in the afternoon, needs a collective solution, which is a lot of people doing it at the same time. So you're not the crazy one, you don't feel guilty, and so that your kids have somebody to play with or do things with. And so when we founded Let Grow, our goal was to make that collective action happy and real and easy. And happy is because everybody's doing it. Real is because you're sort of pushed to do it. And easy is because you're not the only one. And so one of the main things that we've promoted at Let Grow is this free program for schools called the Let Grow Experience. Anybody can look at Let Grow and find it. Teachers can download it. It's free. And what it says is once a month, your kid has to come to you and say, guess what? My homework is to do something new on my own without you. And then we give a list of ideas. You can, wash the car, go to the store, make pancakes, climb a tree, whatever it is, depending on the kid, the age, the neighborhood. And so it is an agreed upon activity, but there has to be something that's done. There has to be some forward momentum towards some new independence. And what's great is that once the kid does go to the store and you're sitting there biting your nails and he's coming home, it's kind of late. Oh my God, should we call him? Should we go? Should we send a search party? And it's like, and then he comes through the door and guess what? He didn't get the milk. He got grape juice because he had $5 and you let him out the door. That's something that both parents are, have to agree to, but dads can move the needle a little. It's like, well, how about we let him do the laundry? No, how about we let him, bring the muffins to the neighbor? Or make the muffins and then bring them to the neighbor. And so it's easier because the school is saying your kid has to do something, but then perhaps the dads can hop in and say, look, you know what I love doing? I used to be a newspaper, a delivery boy. How about we let our kids, go and bring something, around, or put postcards in everybody's mailbox to say, let's have a gathering at the local park on Friday afternoon. I mean, They can take something that is being promoted already, which is that the idea of independence is good and the idea that your kid has to do something new, and move the needle a little. Because, like I said, with me and my husband moved the needle more than me.
Yeah, it's definitely a yin and yang type of approach, right? And I know my wife and I similarly follow that. She's 100% on board with everything that you do at Let Grow. And it still takes both of us kind of reminding each other. We were just up skiing last weekend, and it's we're in the middle of eating on the top of the mountain. Well, let's send our 4-year-old to go and use the restroom on her own. She can do it. She can handle it as long as she's going in the girls' restroom, because the guys' restrooms are disgusting.
Yeah.
That's another thing, especially.
So I hear.
Yeah. So, yeah, those little things, just leaning in and reminding each other. Yeah, it's really helpful.
Right. And also reminding, I put this thing, I call it the parental serenity prayer or something. There's, one of the things that stops most people from letting their kids do something as simple as go to the bathroom by themselves in a crowded place where they're going to be fine, is that they go to the worst case scenario, like, oh, but what if? And then you can come up with any horrible thing that could happen in a bathroom. And the serenity prayer is this. It's like, I don't want terrible things to happen to my kid or any kid, but the world is not perfect, and 1,000,000 to 1 odds there's one, right? And if that's me, I would hope that people would understand that I wasn't making a crazy decision. It was bad luck. Like the bad things that happen to kids are generally because of bad luck, not bad parenting. And then the serenity prayer is that, and also I will refrain from judging the parents if something bad happens to them. And I think one of the reasons that we're so afraid to let our kids do anything these days is not just that we're afraid of the predators or afraid they'll get hurt, but afraid that if anything does happen, there will be no sympathy and only blame, because it's so much easier to, quote unquote, blame the victim, right? Than it is to say, there but for the grace of God go I. So this is the there but for the grace of God go I sort of perspective on parenting, which is that we're all making decisions every day. Can he eat that cookie? Can he stay up 5 minutes later? What if he doesn't hand in his homework? What if I help with the homework? There's just a million decisions, and there are going to be some good decisions and some suboptimal and some determined by just not having enough time. And to recognize that doesn't mean that you're a bad parent because you've made some decisions that turn out poorly. It's just because there's a million decisions and we are not in control. And if you get to what is sort of driving parents the most crazy these days, I'd say underneath all it's social media, it's consumer culture, whatever it is, it's really this idea that we're told that we can control everything in our kids' lives. Just pay more attention. You get the pings every day from the school about the grade on the Spanish test, and you can watch pictures of your kid at summer camp, and you can get reports from the preschool on how many orange segments they ate and did they finish their nuggets. And it's this tsunami of information, most of it completely banal and useless. And the underlying reason for all that is that, well, if you know all this, then you can make sure that nothing bad ever happens. And there's no way you can because we live in a world that is not controlled by us. And if you recognize that, it's easier to parent.
It's interesting. I mean, a real world example, and I mentioned it briefly at the outset, that's our thing in the wintertime is skiing. Lenore, we have, as I said, 3 kiddos, 10, 7, and 4. And everything you just articulated, Lenore, is very, relevant when you're talking about taking a ski trip. Of course, you always have them wear a helmet because that's stupid. Why not? Because somebody else could hit them. Those are the things that you can solve for. But you can't solve for your kid potentially, maybe, possibly falling off the lift. That's a risk. They could go off a cliff. They could do all kinds of things to hurt themselves. That serenity prayer, you're just going to hope that doesn't happen. And then you get out there, and I posted on social media earlier this weekend. My most proud dad moment of many happened again this weekend, watching my 3 kids go down a bump run in Keystone with smiles on their faces, just happy as can be. You just got to get out there, suffer through it from your perspective, have the snacks, have all the things, and just let them get out there and potentially get injured, but grow as they're doing it.
Yeah. The whole idea of exposure therapy in psychology is that you're really afraid of something. Say you're really afraid of spiders. Then you have to be in a room with a spider, and then you have to be 5 feet closer to the spider, and then maybe you have to have the spider on your hand. But in doing that, it allows you to realize, oh, I'm not dying. This is not the end of the world. And what we've prevented parents from having in this last generation with the drop off and pick up and watch and sign in and sign out is exposure to letting your kids do something on their own that you cannot see or control. I feel like one of the things that's not talked about yet, I think it will be, is, we all track our kids, or many people track their kids. I didn't, frankly, but they're older. And that means that you always see what they're doing. It's sort of like you're always there. And so you're never exposed to letting your kid go for a couple hours and not knowing exactly where they are or exactly what they're doing. But if you can do that, if you can force yourself to let go for a little bit, then you start getting acclimated to the idea that they're going to be okay even without you there, even without you holding their hand, even without you high-fiving them, maybe even without a snack. So, my TED Talk came out last year, actually one of the 10 essential TED Talks of last year, and it was called Spend Less Time with Your Kids. And it doesn't mean spend no time with your kids, but it means that when you do give yourself this amazing opportunity to be stunned by your kids, by letting them go and then recognizing that they did something on their own, it's this amazing experience for the kid, the I did it myself feeling, which is just so heady. But it's also they did it themselves. You're so proud, like you were just now. Your kids you weren't, strapped to their backs as they went down this mountain. And we're depriving ourselves of not only the psychological importance of letting go, but the joy of parenting, which is look what my kid did, right? And no wonder parents think that it's a drag to be a parent now. You're always with them. You're unwrapping the snack for them. You're suggesting that eat a couple bites, but 3 bites is too much. And let me put that away for you. And your backpack looks heavy. Let me carry that for you. I see so many people in my neighborhood carrying the scooters that their kids have ridden. I mean, I guess there's no way to keep the scooter at school, but I also see them on the way to school. The kid is on the scooter and they're holding the scooter. And it's like, I guess it's a little faster than just having them walk, but you can teach a 4-year-old, don't cross the street, wait for me to get there. And if they do start heading in the street, well, then you take away their scooter and you wait until they're a little older. But everything being up to you is a huge burden. And it's not only just boring for you to be there every second, but it's boring for them too, because they're not having any adventures.
That point you just brought up is so profound. I really want to double tap on that. And I think that's something, dads, that you and I can really work on. Is it can feel so monotonous, Lenore, every single day to wake up, have breakfast, help your wife while you can, go to work, come back home, spend a little bit of time with your kids, and then just do it over again. And that monotony can be a challenge because, like you said, you're always doing everything for your kids. And what fun is that for you? What fun is that for your kids? But so when you look at the monotony of a day, Lenore, for dads in general, and then having the opportunity to break free a little bit and let your kids take the trash from the restaurant or from Chick-fil-A and go and drop it across the area to throw it away, it releases a bit of a burden for you to have from having to do all that same monotonous work. But two, it gives that little kiddo the freedom to know, hey, I can do that.
Right.
I think that's a really big point that you just brought up. That is something we can really remember.
It is. And also, I hope when you're thinking about like bringing the trash across maybe the parking lot at the Chick-fil-A or the restaurant, we're talking about like your 4-year-old, because what's happened is that we've really recalibrated what kids are capable of doing. And we're celebrating wins that are fine, but they're not really wins. They're just normal life. A win is bigger, right? And I'm not saying that every kid who does the Let Grow experience every month, or they get the assignment, do something new on your own, has to take the subway, right? But a lot of times, it's sort of like, I think of Helen Keller. Helen Keller, was deaf and blind, and her parents hired Annie Sullivan, who was sort of blind, almost blind, to come and teach her. And after, according to the movie, which is just so great with Patty Duke, after about a month or so, she'd finally gotten Helen Keller able to sit at the table, use a knife and fork, and not just grab food and shove it into her mouth off of other people's plates. And the parents go, okay, that's great, you're done. And it's like, oh, no, I'm not. Oh, no, I'm not. There is so much more potential. And I feel like parents have had their expectations in some ways dialed down so low in terms of what their kids can do, and in some ways dialed up so high. We expect them to all be, great readers and critical thinkers. I'm still not sure if I'm a critical thinker. That's just a phrase that's used all the time. And am I a classical liberal? I don't know. These are words that I hear all the time that just sort of float around in my brain. But aside from, succeeding academically, as if they all have to go to a 4-year college, and it better be one on the East Coast that has ivy climbing the walls, aside from that sort of over-expecting from kids, we under-expect them to be able to organize their own game, for instance. And we all know that we organized our own games of, kickball, baseball, basketball,
All the things.
made up games, right? And instead, we put them in organized activities because we're afraid that they'll be bored, or that they might not know how to do this, or they're getting more because an adult is teaching them something. And of course, they're safer, and you can put it on you can see them going up. They went from t-ball to baseball, and now they're in the traveling baseball league 3 or whatever. And it's like, we got to trust that they're humans and that they're wired to make things happen and be curious. The whole idea of this teachable moment that can be good or bad is often just overinterpreted as like, look, honey, this is a pen. What does a pen do? It's like, I wonder. Like, pen starts with P, P. It's a pen. And you've taken all the wonder and curiosity out of a kid's life, and you've turned it into a very boring, didactic, adult-led lesson, which is, we all tune out when, the boss is explaining something that we already know and we've seen it a million times, and thank you very much. And so why would you do that to your kid? And it's boring. You know what a pen is. You know how to spell a pen. It's like you can let them have that joy of discovery of I wonder what this does. Oh, look what it does to the walls. So this underestimation part of my movement is that expecting your kid to be able to order a Coke at McDonald's, or take out the trash, or fold the towels. Good, but not enough. I mean, really, there was that phrase maybe 20 years ago, the soft bigotry of low expectations. It was the idea of the bigotry towards minorities. Oh, well, we won't expect much of them because they're just minorities. Like, are you kidding? They're humans too. Well, the same with kids, right? There's a bigotry and you were talking about it yourself, and a boringness in thinking that your kid can't do everything, so you have to either watch them or high five every time they put their fork in the sink.
Profound. Exactly.
Maybe.
I want to get a little tactical with you if I can, Lenore.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about boys, girls, and how we can engage with our wives on this process. But starting off with boys first. I mean, obviously, there's a profound difference between boys. They're much more rambunctious. Can you give me some ideas and some thoughts as a dad with boys? How can I really start to entice in them some interest in really getting out there? How hard should a dad be on a boy in order to, force them to get out there and have fun and do some of the things that you've talked about already?
Okay, I'm going to talk about a couple things. First of all, my husband always wanted to write the book, Parenting from the Couch, or Being a Dad on the Couch. And he was coming up with, there's a bunch of ideas you can do. It's like, hey, why don't you be the delivery man? And you have to, you're the DoorDash guy, and I sit on the couch and you bring me, my burger or whatever. Or it's shoe store. You have to bring me shoes and I'll just sit here and try them on. So first of all, you're allowed to be a little lazy. Secondly, as much as your kids love playing with you, and you can play with them all you want, they really love playing with other kids. And so one of your jobs as a dad is to make sure that that's possible. And there's a couple of ways to make that happen. First of all, I'm going to plug Let Grow's idea, which is simply to keep the schools open for what we call a Let Grow Play Club. This is the idea of Peter Gray, who I think you should have on as one of your guests. He's a professor of psychology at Boston College. He wrote the book Free to Learn, and he is with me a co-founder of Let Grow. So if you keep the school open for all ages, loose parts, no phones, free play, you're getting kids used to playing without somebody saying, okay, these are the teams and this is the game we're playing, and, Ryan, you're up first. So when I've gone to watch play clubs, it just looks like an old-fashioned playground or even a park. You see a bunch of boys generally go off and play football or soccer. That just happens. And then other kids go to the swings, and some of them draw with chalk. That would have been me. And some of them, you have loose parts out there. And so there's way more interesting things to do than just the standard, swings or soccer. You have big cardboard boxes out there. What are we going to make? Let's make it a castle. No, let's make it a movie theater. How about it's a movie theater in a castle? So you get the creative juices going. There's the collaboration. And the way a play club works is there's an adult there, but they're just like a lifeguard, right? They just stand there and they watch. Preferably they don't watch. And if there's a dispute, they say, well, that's interesting. Is this a kid problem or an adult problem? They say, well, obviously it's a kid problem. And it's like, well, then you're kids. You can figure this out. And after a couple weeks, all the teachers or whoever ends up supervising one of these clubs reports that the kids start figuring out all this stuff by themselves. And the teachers watch it. And they're amazed to see that the kid fell. But instead of me running over and making sure he's okay, and we used to get letters home from the nurse, your child fell on the playground today. It's like, why are we getting this letter? It's not like, wounded in battle, right? So you get kids used to playing, and you get your kids used to arguing and continuing things and coming up with funny games. My favorite game that two kids came up with is they were on a playground where the grass was growing up through some of the cracks, and they were on their knees sort of licking the grass, and the adult said, what are you doing? And they said, we're playing lice. So you need kids to have this time where they can just make things up. And once they learn how to do that, we've heard from parents that their kids start playing more at home. And especially if you have a couple of kids, that's great. So how do you get more than one kid? Say you have just one or two kids, say they don't get along. You have to figure out a neighborhood gathering place and a way to get kids out away from their phones, away from their parents to play. And so we recommend trying to start a free play Fridays, although I just heard about one on Sundays. It doesn't matter at all what the day is. But you alert the other parents, on your listserv, on your WhatsApp, in your neighborhood next door channel. Hey, on Friday, I'm going to be bringing my kids to the park, and I'm going to sit on a bench, and I'll be there so I can watch anybody else's kids who come, and just drop off your kids. And people are like, really? That sounds great. Free time. And so that starts a tradition, and it gets kids used to being at the park, and they meet the other kids who are different ages because it's so hard to meet them in any other circumstance. And it also gets them used to playing. And then also the Let Grow experience where the kids have to do something on their own. My favorite story, and I just sent it out in a letter to donors, was that one mom let her son, she was very nervous. Like whenever the doorbell rang, she would have everybody lie on the ground like there was a sniper coming. So really, I'd say over the top nervous. But her son, she only let him ride his bike, 10 years old, on his block. And then finally, because he was so bored, she let him go around the corner, and he ended up meeting another friend and another friend. And now they're a biker gang of 10 kids, and they get together after school. What dads can do is encourage this. Hey, did you hear about Free Play Fridays? Hey, maybe our school can start a Let Grow Play Club. And then the other thing you can do is get together with some other dads, dads or moms, it really doesn't matter, in the neighborhood and say, we're going to start a friendship club. Just what some lady called it when she wrote to my site. So now I call it that too, which is like, look, there's 3 other families that our kids are all friends. Let's just make it so that a pact, sort of, that my kid can knock on any of your doors, your kids can knock on my door, and I don't consider it this horrible imposition or free babysitting or, how rude. I simply think, oh, yeah, and if, James is there and he can play, out they go. And they can either play at our house or at the park or at your house or someplace in between. But just renormalizing the knocking on the door, and also negates the need for phones. Right? If your kid can knock on a door. So it's sort of a win-win. And your dad, you can propose this to your wife, and you could say, look, it's recommended in, The Anxious Generation. It's recommended on Let Grow. It's recommended in other books that I've, sort of consulted on now. So these are just things to renormalize you stepping back and letting your kids have this real childhood of interacting with other kids.
I talk a lot, Lenore, about having a tribe of men. Not your drinking buddies from college, but men that are like you that have
they
your
grow into
values
your drinking buddies.
Yeah, exactly. But what a great excuse, right? All right, dads, we're going to have a Let Grow Play Club this weekend. We'll show up. The kids are not allowed to interact with us unless somebody's bleeding hard.
No, we don't show up. We show up, drop them off, and we go drink or coffee or hot chocolate, whatever it is. And when we go someplace else, they know how to get in touch with us. Maybe one of them you leave with a walkie-talkie, right? Walkie-talkies are a great idea. And don't stay there, because inevitably, if you are there, it's like, Dad, I'm bored. Or, Dad, do we have anything to eat? The whole eating all the time, as if like your kids are going to starve between 3 and 6 p.m. They're not. They don't even need water, really, unless you're in the Mojave. So really, they don't need you as much as this culture has led us to believe.
I'm glad you brought up the walkie-talkie. Let me show you this real fast. So
he goes to the cabinet. He is taking something out. He is bringing over let me guess.
So this is it's a POC-Link radio.
It's a what?
It's called POC-Link. It's a radio. It's a walkie-talkie.
Okay.
But it's cellular based. So you brought that up, and that makes perfect sense. As you can give this to one of your kids. They're not going to text on it. They're not going to do anything but being able to call you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we can go off and do our thing, and then they can reach us from anywhere with that. So that's good. That was one of my questions. Is this too much? But at least then they can call you if somebody.
It's good. I mean, I'd say at some point, take off the training wheels and let them be there without a device to call you. Because one of the things that I think is also changing childhood is not just our ability to track them and think that we can control everything, but their ability to contact us when they're, bored or afraid or something goes wrong. What you really want to have is a kid who can summon their inner resources and realize, like, hey, I can handle this. And their inner resource is not Dad, right? Their inner resource is, what would Dad do?
Absolutely. And you talked about it in your book, too. If they're able to call you to come and fix the flat tire and bring them home, then they miss out on that opportunity to go through that stressful situation and grow out of it.
And you, the parent, miss out on the opportunity of seeing how much your kid can handle. Right? If your kid calls you, I got a flat tire on my bike, you race over there, you feel great, you solved the problem, but they didn't solve the problem, and you have no idea that they could solve a problem. Could they walk the bike home? Could they hide the bike in the bushes and come home? Could they hitchhike? There are a lot of options or ask a passing stranger, hey, can you help me with this? There's so many things that a kid can learn how to do and overcome their inner their reluctance to, like, what am I supposed to do? This is hard. How embarrassing. Do I really have to talk to this other person? Now what? All those things are the the precedent to growth, right? You talked to a stranger. You walked home a mile with a broken bike. You did it. And then you come home, a foot taller. And you, the parent, don't feel like, darn, I didn't get to help them. You feel like, look at my kid. So it's just a win for both generations.
Or you're like Jesse Ventura that you talked about.
Yeah.
He rode home on a broken foot and it changed his entire course of his life and his career.
I think so, yeah. He was a kid who did mangle his foot on a bike and walked home and never forgot it and felt compelled to talk about it even after he'd become, one of the most famous wrestlers and the governor of Minnesota. It's like, here's what I did when I was 10. Because what does your self-definition come from? It comes from what you can do, what you're capable of. And you have to let kids be capable of some things on their own before they get to define themselves as this competent person. I was talking to a pastor in Austin who put it for me best. And I was like shocked because all I've done is, as I said, talk about this for 17 years. And she put it better. She was pastor's wife. She said, doing something creates competence, right? Because at first you're bad at it and then you get better at it. And competence creates confidence. We keep wanting to have confident kids, but you're not confident just because your parents love you, right? You're confident because you've done something. You walked home with the broken bike. And so don't keep depriving our kids of these experiences and expect them to grow up confident.
Yeah, you're capable. Give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned briefly talking about girls. What can dads do, Lenore, to help with this crazy anxiety and social media and body image and all of these things that our girls, as they're continuing to grow up, are going to and are facing?
Well, I always go back to my one-trick pony, which is I do believe that independence, first of all, it gets you away from your phone. And secondly, it shows you're not just, what shade of eyeshadow you decided to buy from Sephora that day. You're the kid who brought home the fixins for a meal and you made dinner, right? That's a new self-definition. That's great. And also, the idea of free play is how you figure out who your friends are. You make really long-lasting friends. You're not just friends with people online. You're friends with people in real life that you do have arguments with, right? Or that you do come up with a fun thing and you create with. I mean, I was like making songs with my friends when I was growing up. Not to mention kickball, not to mention Chinese jump rope, not to mention all the other stuff. So kids need real time in real life without screens. And that's why, we recommend that schools stay open for free play. And different ages, say you're lonely, say you're a girl who doesn't have a lot of friends because you're smarter than the other third graders, or you're slower than the other third graders, but you hang out with the kindergartners, you give them a piggyback ride, or you talk to the fifth graders about your feelings. I mean, suddenly school is a different place for you. You have different relationships. They're deeper and they're wider. And that's why Let Grow exists. I don't say that we solve every problem, but people want this third place where kids can go and hang out and be away from their screens and not just come home and be on their phones and be comparing and be texting. And the school can be that third place because you have everybody who's already there. The parents trust it. It's safe whether you're in a dangerous neighborhood or in a terrible neighborhood. And you've got a critical mass of the thing that kids really want, which is other kids to hang out with. This Harris poll that we did over the study, it was me, John Haidt, and his chief researcher, Zach Roush. We asked kids, this is video, so I'll look for my little graph if I can find it on my desk. We asked kids, what would you like to do? How do you like to spend time with your friends? You have a choice. You could be just hanging out with them, no parents, just goofing around, doing whatever you want. Or you could be in an organized activity like ballet or soccer, chess, whatever. Or you could be online with them. And that means you could be playing video games, or you could be texting or Snapchat or whatever. And I'm looking for my graph. I can't find it. I'll just tell you what the results were. Spending time with your friends without an agenda, without adults, was the top choice. Second choice, organized activities, soccer and ballet. Third choice, 20-point difference, was being online. Yeah. So we keep thinking that kids are desperate to be online, right? That's all they want. They just love their phones. That's all they care about. These were kids 8 to 12. No, they care about having fun with their friends, building relationships, goofing around, making jokes and flirting. And when you don't allow them to do that in real life, the only other choices are, in between innings at soccer or online. So they're online by default, not by desire. And default is ours, as it were, because if you can't open the door and let your kids go out and play, free play Fridays, make a friendship club, well, then of course they have to be online because that's where they can meet. That's where they can play games. That's where they can talk to each other. That's where they can hang out. When you disallow hanging out in real life because you think it's too scary, the kids are going to be abducted. The only place they go is, thank God, they have the phone. It's Narnia for them. It's their alternative reality where they can go and be. So give them a way to hang out in real life, after school, at a play club. Give them more experiences in real life, the Let Grow experience, once a month, doing something new on their own. And I think you've gone part of the way, probably not the whole way, to solving a lot of the anxiety problems that you were just discussing among girls. And I have to say, and then I'll stop rattling on. Maybe give my graphs. No. There was a study done, a pilot study of using independence as therapy for kids with a diagnosis of anxiety. And the pilot study was wildly successful. And now the psychologist who invented independence therapy, which was based on the Let Grow experience, his name is Camilo Ortiz. Now he just got a gigantic grant, for 3 years to do a more intensive and wider study of using independence as a way of treating kids who are anxious. And that's because when you're anxious, you don't know what you can handle, so you're scared of trying, so you don't try, so then you don't have any idea what you can handle, and then it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy of not doing anything. Whereas being told, I want you to do something new on your own. Is there something that you'd like to do? And generally kids have a couple things that they do want to do. It's like, well, they might not they might not want to walk to school, but they might want to climb a tree, or they might want to try making, breakfast for the family. And as they do these things, the competence leads to confidence. And there's something called generalizing, which is you've been afraid of, there was a study done literally of fear of, I think it was spiders and heights. And the group of these people, these weren't kids, were treated for one of them. Some of them were treated for height fear. Some of them were treated for spider fear. And then it turned out that they all felt less afraid of the other thing as well, because this newfound bravery and confidence generalized to their other fears. So if you have kids who are very anxious, socially anxious, whatever, and they start being more independent, evidence seems to show that their anxiety levels go down. Last anecdote, promise. But I interview kids for college. And on Sunday, I was interviewing this one young woman, so delightful, who said that she had social anxiety. I'm like, oh, no, not another one talking about their problems. But in fact, it had happened after COVID, and she got to the point where she was just almost terrified to talk to anyone. And she said, but then I decided to make myself do one scary thing a day. I'm like what? And she said, well, like talking to you. She didn't have a choice. But she said the day before she'd been to the bagel store. And I thought, wow, she's 17. She's applying to Yale. And it was a big deal for her to go to the bagel store. But it was. And she realized, people don't hate you, and you could say your order wrong and say, no, excuse me, I don't want the chive cream cheese or whatever. And she figured out for herself how important exposure therapy was. And the exposure was to the thing that she was afraid of, which is social interactions. And by doing that, and by ordering soup in a restaurant, this is literally what she did, she was getting better. And so if you want kids to feel better about themselves, you have to give them opportunities for them to see how much they can handle. And that means you not being there. Our slogan at Let Grow is, when adults step back, kids step up.
We've got 2 more questions for you, Lenore. I really appreciate your time. First, before we move on to that, can you tell us what you're working on next? What's the next chapter in your professional career look like? Where can people find you?
Oh, first of all, find me at Let Grow. So I'm Lenore at Let Grow, but go to letgrow.org, and there's a section for schools, section for parents. We've changed the laws in 11 states so that you can't be accused of neglect simply because your kid is outside. We're working in another 5 or 6 states right now. So you can find all sorts of stuff there. You can find crime statistics there that are very reassuring, that if you have to show a spouse how rare kidnapping is and how crime has been going on a nosedive since the early 90s, that's all there. And there's even a little card that you can print out for your kid that says, I'm not lost or neglected. My parents know I'm out here. If you don't believe me, here's their phone number that kids can carry with them. So there's just a lot at Let Grow. So what I'm trying to do is, I love giving talks. So I'm always trying to get more talks, speaking at a bunch of places in the spring. And then I'm very interested in the issue of how tracking impacts the parent-child relationship and also child confidence and a child's view of the world, whether it's, safe or unsafe, ready for them or not. So I'm teaming up with a couple of professors to start some surveys of college students. And I feel like it's a field that people haven't looked at all. They're looking at kids looking at their phones, but they're not looking at parents looking at kids on their phones. And I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. I'm definitely going to continue to follow. All right, last question for you. I really appreciate it.
That was the last question. Okay.
Last question.
Okay, yeah.
This one's hypothetical, but it hits home for you. You got your 2 boys. They're all grown. They're out of the house.
They are.
You've taught them a lot of stuff, Lenore, but they've forgotten everything except for one piece of diamond advice. What is that advice that you want your kiddos to carry with them as they continue into their adult life?
This is from my husband because he's so much more proactive than me. It's like, just try it. That's it. I will tell you, the piece of advice I got from my mom that was the best, which is march to a different drummer. That helped me a lot. But I think just try. You're going to fail a lot of the time. Who cares, right? Just try it.
Lenore, you've done so much for this world. You continue to do it. Thank you for joining me today. It's been an honor.
Hey, thank you for telling me that. That's really nice. I'm going to put on a T-shirt.
Have a good day. Thank you so much.